Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Prevent Burnout, Mindfulness, Saying No, and the Power of a Resilient Mindset, brought to you by your Vanderbilt Alumni Association. I'm Sarah Whitney Anderson, Assistant Director of Alumni and Student Engagement, and I'm so glad you could join us from wherever you are this afternoon. Today's webinar will last around 45 minutes with time at the end for questions. Please feel free to type questions as you have them into the questions box on the side panel of your screen throughout the presentation, and we will make sure these are addressed in some way before time is up. We will record today's webinar and post on the Expert Advice webpage in VU Connect, and we will share the recording with you via email. Many of you know our presenter today from previous alumni career offerings here at Vanderbilt, and I'm excited she's back with us for this presentation. Lisa Abramson is a best-selling author, TEDx speaker, mindfulness teacher, and executive coach that has led workshops at organizations like Cisco, Salesforce, Microsoft, and the Stanford Graduate School of Business on mindfulness and creating sustainable success. She has guided meditations streamed around the world over 750,000 times. Lisa is an alumna of Vanderbilt and a mom of two girls and lives in Menlo Park, California. Find out more about her at www.lisaabramson.com. I am so excited to now turn this afternoon's presentation over to Lisa.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Lisa Abramson. Welcome to this webinar. You've made an excellent choice to invest in yourself and join this webinar. I know you have a ton of choices in how you spend your time. So I want to start off by saying I'm very grateful that you're spending this time with me. And I hope to give you a lot of new insights, but also practical takeaways that you can bring into your life, especially right now as we approach the holiday season. Some practical tips to really bring a little bit more peace, a little more balance, and bring some more joy into your life. So this webinar is for you if you're usually stuck in overdrive. You might be a type A overachieving go-getter, and these strategies for preventing burnout, being more mindful, saying no, and creating a resilient mindset have been so important in my life. And they've helped me overcome obstacles on the road to success and also helped me bounce back from major setbacks. I've also seen this stuff work for countless clients to help them overcome self-doubt, bounce back after burnout, and really tap into what I call a resilient mindset so that they can tackle challenges with a newfound sense of confidence and courage and dedication. So as was mentioned in my bio, I'm an author and an executive coach, a keynote speaker, and a mindfulness teacher. And my clients work with me in a variety of ways, including one-on-one in my executive coaching practice. And I do that virtually through phone sessions, through online courses. I have a free 30-day meditation challenge to teach you how to start a meditation practice if that's something you're interested in doing. And I also have a course called Resilient AF, which helps you become super duper resilient. So before starting my own business and becoming a coach and mindfulness teacher over 5 years ago, I spent nearly a decade in mobile and media, marketing and PR. And most recently, I was running marketing as an executive at a mobile advertising company here in Silicon Valley. And although I was successful and I was named to this list of the 25 women to watch in mobile, my job lacked meaning, and I felt more and more drained by the work I was doing each day. I was also commuting to and from San Francisco down into Silicon Valley, so I was in my car 3 hours a day, which definitely didn't help either. So I desperately wanted to do work that I loved, but I had no clue where to start or what I would even do if I left my job. So thankfully for me, in this kind of moment of, my kind of normal overachieving type A go-getter self was like, I don't have a plan, I don't know what's next, or I see what what it would look like if I was promoted in my job. And I saw the path ahead of me. It just wasn't exciting. And it was pretty disconcerting to not know what I was going to do next or where to go. And I still was feeling immensely stressed and feeling the physical ramifications of the stress and burnout. So for me, thankfully, a good old Google search on stress reduction techniques pointed me towards meditation. And from there, you can say, like, my overachiever went nuts in the field of personal development, from mindfulness to coaching to positive psychology, neuroplasticity, willpower, wellness. I just did a deep dive in the world of well-being, and I came out so inspired to share everything I had learned along the way. But I knew my friends and family, they weren't going to be interested in attending a 10-day silent meditation retreat like I did, where we quite literally meditated from 6 in the morning to 9 p.m. at night. And we didn't talk the entire 10 days. So I had to figure out a way to make everything I had learned be more easily approachable and broken up into smaller size chunks that people could really integrate into their lives and make an instant impact. So that's what I've been focusing my attention on, and thankfully been able to share with others along this journey. So my mission is to use my authenticity and deep compassion to inspire women and a few good men to experience more love and joy and contentment on a daily basis. And that mission has taken me on the stage at TEDx, to sharing a stage with Brooke Shields to talk about our experience after having children, to being featured in a TV commercial, writing my book, and teaching workshops at some of the fastest growing companies in the Bay Area. And it's been an adventure, but like all adventures, it's had challenges too. And these challenges have helped me grow and further respect the power and significance of what I'm going to share with you. So to kick things off, I'm going to ask you a few questions to settle in, and then we're going to do a brief meditation practice. There's no experience necessary, and I'll be guiding you through the practice. So first off, I want you to just ask yourself, what's your intention with taking this webinar? Or what do you hope to get out of today? And just, you could jot down a note if anything comes to mind. When you signed up for this, what's your intention for this webinar? What do you really hope to get out of it? And now I want to see if you can give yourself permission to give yourself that thing, to believe that it's possible, that you can get that nugget of wisdom or insight or a new technique that will really help you along your journey. And now we'll do a brief mindfulness practice to settle in. So if you're not already seated, you can take a seated position. You can have your legs uncrossed and firmly placed on the floor. And you should have your back be upright but not rigid. Sometimes it's helpful to come a little bit up in your chair with your back not leaning back so that your chest is upright, and you can gently close your eyes. And just take a breath, a deep breath in and out. And just allow yourself to switch from the usual mode of doing to a mode of non-doing. You see if you can notice yourself sitting here, watching your breath, simply being. And as you allow your body to become still, bring your attention to the fact that you're breathing. And become aware of the movement of your breath as it comes in and gently releases. You might want to put your hand on your chest or on your belly. You want to just feel the physical sensations of breathing, the gentle rise and fall. And you can even picture yourself inhaling calm, peaceful energy, and then exhaling any stress or tension. Not trying to change the breath, just noticing it, however it is right now. It might be long or short, or smooth, or shallow. Just notice your breath, how it is right now. And noticing the physical sensations of breathing. Maybe cool air coming in through your nose, or your chest gently expanding, or your belly. Now see if you can notice any thoughts you might be having without getting lost in their content. Just notice the thoughts. You might think, am I doing this right? Or perhaps even a judgment. Am I a good meditator? See if you can notice the thoughts, whatever they are, without judging them or wishing they're different. Just imagine them as leaves on a river, just gently passing through, passing by. Noticing the thoughts passing on leaves, trickling down a river. And then bringing your attention back to the breath. Inhaling calm, peaceful energy and exhaling any stress or tension. And then just notice the sounds in the room. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. So thank you for doing that short practice, just a few minutes. And hopefully you notice some changes or some shifts that are possible when we take a moment to reset like that and be intentional. So did you notice in that meditation that when you have a little bit of distance from your thoughts, that you are not your thoughts, you're actually the one that's aware of your thoughts. And this is something that perhaps you've experienced before, or maybe you haven't. Maybe you've been, your mind is busy and can even be full of thoughts, and we can easily get lost in the content of our thoughts. But one thing that the meditation practice helps is for you to become aware that you are the one that's observing your thoughts. So you are not your thoughts. You're the one that's aware of your thoughts, which also means that you don't have to believe your thoughts. And so having a meditation practice can be quite helpful to create a pause between having a thought and then automatically believing it. So our thoughts are so interesting to us. We can easily get swept away in them without even noticing. Perhaps in the meditation you were planning what you were going to do after this webinar and thinking about maybe even what you were going to have for lunch today or what you needed to accomplish this afternoon. That's why the training of a meditation practice is so helpful. If you think about the fact that your thoughts are constantly being secreted from your brain, just like the liver secretes bile, and these thoughts are arising out of seemingly nowhere, and they disappear back again into the nothingness. It helps you realize that your thoughts aren't really all that personal. And it can help you start to question how much power we give our thoughts and how vital it is to have that little pause and distance before you believe whatever it is you're thinking. So I hope you can connect with this concept and maybe even what a relief it is to learn, or maybe even remember that we don't have to believe our thoughts. And there's so much freedom in this statement. But without a mindfulness practice and deliberate mindset training like we're going to do in this webinar, it's so easy to get stuck on autopilot and get lost in our thoughts, believing their content, and then triggering a flood of emotions. So I'm going to talk now about the evolutionary hangover. And this is what happens because by default, our mind has both a negativity bias and a confirmation bias. So that means we're more likely to focus on negative events and also seek information that verifies whatever we believe. So this becomes a double whammy when we're doubting ourselves and our abilities, because it's so much easier to notice what's wrong and the ways that we aren't good enough. And then the confirmation bias comes in and grabs anything that verifies our perceived flaws. So some people call this an evolutionary hangover because basically what was created in our minds thousands and thousands of years ago to protect ourselves, basically it was helpful back in the day to be able to see something that was wrong in the picture, to spot a predator or a dangerous, snake or whatever it was. It was more important for us to figure out quickly what's wrong in the scenario than what was right. So this is a survival mechanism that we still have, but we don't really need. So please know that, seeking out the negative, that negativity bias, and then also the confirmation bias, this is not a personal failure of yours. It's just what it's like to have a human operating system that was developed thousands and thousands of years ago with very few upgrades. So it takes work to get out of autopilot, but it's so worth it because it provides us that pause before we automatically reply. And recent advances in neuroplasticity have even shown that what we think and do and pay attention to, it changes the very structure and function of our brain. And I think this is just absolutely amazing. And this is part of what got me so excited when I did that initial Google search and was reading all the research about meditation and mindfulness, is that we can actually intentionally cultivate the brain for well-being by changing the way we relate to our thoughts, basically. And meditation is the most powerful way to do this. And what we can also change what we relate to is our inner critic, and we can start to develop more self-compassion, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about later. So there's been recent studies that have shown with 8 weeks of mindfulness training, you can actually start to increase the amount of gray matter in your brain. So you actually can have structural changes in your brain, and gray matter promotes learning and your memory. And then you can actually, in those 8 weeks too, start to shrink the size of your amygdala. And in case you don't remember from science class back at Vandy, you might, the amygdala is what basically controls the fight or flight response. It's your stress control center in your brain. And that can actually start to shrink in size. Again, that physical piece of your brain can start to shrink in size so that you're less reactive to the stress around you. So I think that this is just absolutely fascinating. And this can be the result of simple mindfulness practices. So in order to break free from the burnout cycle, which is one of the topics that I know brought you to this webinar today, was burnout. And, the first thing we need to know is to notice that we're in it. And that is, of course, always step one of mindfulness, is like just noticing what's going on. So I want to share some of the early warning signs of burnout, and maybe you just take a tally on your paper and just write which of these, or if any, or how many are true right now, just so you can do a quick self-assessment of how you're doing in terms of your level of burnout right now. So the number one warning sign is really high levels of stress and anxiety. The second is a lack of engagement. So this could show up if you're just feeling like not engaged in your work, or not feeling motivated to be contributing. The third thing is increased cynicism. The fourth, distracted eating. Maybe you're eating all your meals on the go, or scarfing them down in between meetings, or always eating standing up or in front of the TV. Not getting enough sleep is the fifth. Low on energy and exhaustion. And this could mean even if you are getting a full night's sleep, you still wake up feeling really groggy and low energy and exhausted. You might feel like there's never enough time. So you're always constantly rushing from around trying to accomplish everything, but always feeling like there's never enough time. Burnout can also manifest itself in terms of excessive worrying or high levels of self-criticism. If that inner critic is really loud and you find yourself, the voice of your inner critic is really commanding, that's a warning sign of burnout. You might even have some physical illnesses. You might have migraines or stomach aches, things that might be the physical manifestations of being burnt out and that stress and anxiety. There might be numb feelings or an increase in addictive behavior. You might find yourself just being inefficient and not able to really complete tasks. You're not taking breaks. Maybe you can't even remember the last time you took a vacation. And also a warning sign could be not getting enough exercise. So if you're experiencing any of those, I feel for you. I've been burnt out myself. I know it feels awful. And it is really tough when we find ourselves in this cycle. But I'm going to give you some tools on how to break free from this burnout cycle and how to learn to support yourself. And the reason this matters, there's been studies to show 45% of physicians in the U.S. are experiencing burnout, and 50 to 80% of bankers worldwide also on the edge of burnout. And that leads to approximately $450 billion a year in lost productivity. So this matters, you matter, and the good news is that we can shift this. So how do you start to counter burnout? As you could guess, a mindfulness practice is one wonderful way to reset and start to actually restructure your brain to find what's good, to connect with that kind of calmer energy, some of that peace of mind, a little less of the rushing, less stress. So that is a great way to start. And I'm actually in this webinar, I'm going to talk about 3 different strategies you can use to counter the burnout and to really recenter yourself. So the first thing is going to be practicing mindfulness. The second thing is getting better at saying no. And the third thing is to create a resilient mindset. And I'll tell you more about what that entails. So first, talking about mindfulness, you have to know what's going on and you have to see things for what they are. So mindfulness is the awareness that arises from paying attention to the present moment without judging it or wishing it were different. And as you notice, we did that during the brief meditation practice that we did together at the beginning of this webinar. So it's that awareness that arises from seeing things clearly and not judgmentally. So this is really important. We need to notice when we're basically what I call when we're in the red zone. Or you can notice when you shift from operating in the green zone, feeling great, to slipping into yellow, and then when are you in the red zone? And we need to see that and go, wow, okay, this actually is a lot. And I find for, many of the overachievers I coach, they don't actually even realize how much pressure they're putting on themselves, how many competing demands. And then when we actually stop and look at all of the things on their plate, they're like, wow, okay, that is a lot. I'm trying to, discipline my dog and, train my dog, and I'm remodeling the house, and one of my kids is starting a new school, and we've got the holidays coming up, and I have these huge work presentations and deadlines. And you go, wow, that is a lot. So mindfulness can help us to see clearly what it is that we're experiencing. And so it's always step one. And then basically when we see how we might be having a hard time or how we might be experiencing burnout, then what can we do to take action to alleviate some of that? And that's really compassion in action, seeing suffering and taking action to alleviate it. But sometimes it's really hard to do, especially when we're stuck in a perpetual busy state and we are truly, maxed out. So that's when saying no becomes really essential. And, we know we need to get better at saying no, but it can be really hard in practice. So I have some tips that I'm going to share to make this easier. So the first thing is to realize that we need to free up time to take care of ourselves. So that's probably one thing that gets neglected. I've certainly seen that with the people that I've coached, C-level executives, directors, up and coming stars in their company, is that the work always gets done. What doesn't get done is taking care of ourselves. So external commitments seem to get, the ball gets moved forward. All of those deadlines are met, yet we feel depleted, exhausted, and burnt out because we haven't been saying no so that we can free up the time to take care of ourselves. So taking time for yourself to do things that truly nurture you, it's essential to your well-being. Yet many of us treat this me time like it's a total luxury. And we can also feel guilty before, during, or after taking time for ourselves. I know this happens for me, especially when I'm kind of in what I'm calling that green zone, and I'm doing some preventative self-care because I want to keep operating at a high level and I want to keep feeling great. Many of us can fall into that trap of thinking we only deserve self-care when something is really off and when we're in the yellow or red zone. Yet this, it leads, what I mentioned before, to that exhaustion, depletion. It leads to burnout when we neglect what's a totally normal human need for downtime. Excuse me. So the truth is this me time is the least selfish thing you can do, because when you take care of yourself, you become more relaxed and positive and productive. And we often know we desperately need time for reflection or a meditation practice or just walks in nature or maybe even more sleep. Yet our to-do list keeps growing and we can't seem to find the time. So here's how you can say no and some tips to make it a practice that sticks. So the first thing is to start small, and just know that it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's hard to say no. We fear that, we're going to disappoint others or let them down. And you just have to recognize that's whether what you're saying no to is a small task or a big one, you're going to have those feelings. So I recommend with all my clients that you start saying no to things that are small and notice that you still might feel uncomfortable, but that you can manage that emotional discomfort. The second thing is to check which beliefs are running the show. And what I mean by this is it's really helpful to journal or spend some time thinking about your relationship to self-care so you can uncover what might be stopping you from filling your bucket and taking care of yourself. So you could ask yourself the following questions. Do you feel like the time you don't spend working is time wasted? Do you feel like the time you don't spend working is time wasted? Do you feel like others might deserve your time more than you do? How might your self-worth be connected to your productivity? You could also ask yourself, how does taking time for self-care align with your values and what's most important to you? And the one question that also really made a big impact for me was asking myself, like, why is it important to model taking good care of myself to the next generation? And for me, I can often find deeper motivation when I think about my daughters and wanting to model to them what it looks like to value this downtime and understand that it's a normal and natural human need, and it's really not selfish at all. And it actually takes a lot of courage to take the time and to take the rest that we need. So I want you to, give yourself permission to take some time for yourself, to say no to a few things. Check in with those beliefs that are running the show. The third thing is to trust your body. Often we can feel, if we start to tune into how we're feeling, when someone does make a request of us, you can tell in your body, like you can get a kind of gut instinct, yes or no. Does this feel good or not? And if things are falling into the category of shoulds, but you really don't feel like they align with your values and what you're trying to accomplish, it's okay to say no. And you can trust what your body is telling you. Sometimes, especially, with the holiday season coming up, you might get a lot of invitations to events, and it might actually be that, one night staying home and taking a bubble bath is like exactly what you need versus going to yet another party. So you need to trust your body and make those choices for you. The fourth thing is to not apologize. Just saying no, and being short and confident in your no is really powerful. So here are a couple of ways to politely but firmly say no, since I know that like the actual delivery, when it comes to that moment, that can be awkward and uncomfortable when we're used to saying no so often. So I found that these two ways of saying no can be really helpful, to just have these in your back pocket as a little saying no cheat sheet. So the first way I like to say no is to say, thank you so much for your enthusiasm and support. I really appreciate it, but I can't take on anything else right now. So I'm not able to do X, Y, Z. The next way also I think it's helpful is to say, while working with a coach, I made a commitment that I wouldn't take on any more projects right now. I'm working towards creating more balance in my life. Thanks for your support in helping me make this happen. And as you can see in both of those responses, they're both, polite and I think very warm, but also firm. And they don't open the door for additional questions or comments. It's, here are my needs. Here's what I'm doing. Thanks for your support in making that happen. The sixth thing you can do that's really helpful in getting better at saying no is to start a no club. And finding supportive friends can be really helpful here. And what I mean is just start start a text chain with a handful of friends or one friend and say, I'm trying to say no more often. Can I tell you, can I practice with you or tell you what I'm going to say no to? And just, have that group to hold each other accountable. And you can also get a lot of support there by recognizing it's uncomfortable for other people to say no as well. The last thing is to really focus on your yes. So when you're saying no to something, what are you saying yes to? So you could, say, I'm saying no to some social activities or some, non-promotable tasks at work, things like, organizing the office holiday party or doing any sort of, note-taking or busy work that doesn't really advance your career. You could, when you're saying no to some things, it's helpful to focus on your yes. So I'm focusing on these high impact projects instead, or I'm focusing on getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, or I'm focusing on, mental clarity, or I'm focusing on getting regular exercise. So focusing on your yes can be really powerful, and it can give you that extra boost and confidence you need to really say no. The next piece, the third piece, so we talked about, what can you do to prevent burnout? And I said, starting a mindfulness practice, getting better at saying no. And the third piece is developing a resilient mindset. And I chose a firmly rooted tree here. That seems to embody what I mean when I say a resilient mindset. When your roots are very deep, even if the storm comes, it's not going to blow you over because you really do have that firm rooting. So I like this visual here. All right. And so one more thing, before about saying no is that taking action is really important. So here you are on this webinar today, listening to this and be like, oh, okay, here's some ways to get better at saying no. So I actually want you to bring this to life and bring it into action. And because knowing something conceptually and doing it is so much different. It's so different. And it's a major way that we can kind of block learning and keep ourselves stuck is by telling ourselves like, oh, I know this already. Like, this makes sense. I know how I can say no, versus shifting your mindset and challenging yourself to take action with this knowledge. So what are you going to do? And I don't want to say even today, what's one thing that you can take off your plate? It doesn't have to be for today, but what's one thing you can remove from your schedule or take off your plate today so you can say yes to yourself? So I want you to just jot down a note, whatever's come to your mind. And these can be things you've realized that don't really support you or that are no longer serving you or aren't aligned with your values. And I invite you to kind of figure out how you can say no and get that thing off of your plate so you can create a little more time and space into your calendar. So make sure to do that to get the most out of this webinar, is to take action and actually say no on something. Okay, back to the resilient mindset. So there's 5 components of a resilient mindset that I'm going to talk about today. And the first piece is to be on your own side. And this involves kind of quieting your inner critic, that voice inside your head that is, and learning how to really be on your own side and support yourself. So we create a lot of our own suffering through the harsh way we talk to ourselves. I mean, think about it. If you had someone in your life that was constantly yelling at you and cutting you down the way that you talk to yourself, you would have ditched this person years ago. You would never tolerate that kind of rude or mean or degrading behavior from someone else. Yet we do it to ourselves all day long. And it creates a lot of emotional suffering for us. It leads us to being burnt out, exhausted, and feeling like we're never enough. So many of us would like to believe that we're thinking beings, we're going along our merry way, we're being rational, we're making solid decisions, based on research that we've carefully gone over our mind. But the truth is when we're stressed, when we're burnt out, we're emotional beings who occasionally think. So the author and researcher Brené Brown brilliantly says that when something difficult happens, our emotions are driving the car. What you think and how you behave are not even riding shotgun. They're tied up and locked in the trunk. So emotion is driving the car. So I'm going to tell you how to better manage your inner critic, because your inner critic does lead to that emotional reaction. It makes us feel bad about ourselves. And it'll also help you soothe some of those painful emotions that come when we start to be mean to ourselves and when that inner critic is really loud. And as you remember probably from earlier in the webinar, I was talking about one of those warning signs for burnout is a really loud inner critic. So that's why we're covering this today. So the most powerful way I've learned to deal with our inner critic is to externalize your inner critic's voice and imagine your inner critic as a full-blown character. So in order to create a characterization of your inner critic, it's helpful to imagine you're about to try something for the first time, or maybe enter a party where you don't know someone, or you're going to go give a talk to a group of people. What does your inner critic say in those moments? Maybe it says you're not good enough, or you'll fail and look stupid. Our inner critic usually isn't all that creative and says the same few unhelpful phrases over and over. So I want you to paint a picture of that critic in your mind's eye. Can you see a face or a character that represents the critic? And I know this is a little strange, but I promise you it works wonders. So I want you to picture that inner critic. It might look like, an amorphous blob. It might look like, someone who is critical from your life. It might be someone from a character from a movie. And I want you to give your inner critic a name as well. And mine I just call Mean Lisa. And she just looks like me. She's just basically a meaner, nastier version of me. So that can also be, it doesn't have to be totally creative and out there, but whatever you pick, it's just fine. So I want you to have this mental picture of your inner critic. Do you have one? Okay. So you're picturing that inner critic. And then for the next week, I want you to notice when your inner critic is loud and critical, and then say to your inner critic, I heard you and I've got this. And if you remember one thing from this webinar, please remember this. Stop fighting with your inner critic. You're not your thoughts, and you don't have to believe what your inner critic is saying. Painting this mental picture of your inner critic is a great practice for giving you a little space between hearing your inner critic's voice and automatically believing it. So again, don't fight with your inner critic. It'll just get louder. It's a scared little part of you that wants to be seen and heard. So telling your inner critic that you've heard their concern, it works wonders to really turn down its volume. So when you hear your inner critic, you just say, I heard you and I've got this. So I invite you to try that out for the next week and see how it helps. The other thing you can do is practice self-compassion. And if you go to lisaabramson.com/30day, you can join a 30-day meditation challenge that I have where it features 5-minute meditations that are emailed to you every day. And a lot of them are based around self-compassion and quieting your inner critic. So I invite you to start there if you're interested in starting a meditation practice. The next area I want to talk about in terms of building a resilient mindset is choosing courage over comfort. And vulnerability is the center of all emotion. And when you shut it down, you shut everything down. But so many of us grew up thinking that vulnerability is weakness, or that vulnerability is oversharing and basically a thing to be avoided. According to Brené Brown, who spent her life researching shame and vulnerability, who I talked about earlier, and she has some wonderful books around leadership and courage and vulnerability. Vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, or emotional exposure. Basically showing up when you have zero control over the outcome, which is totally terrifying. It's not at all weak, in my opinion, but being vulnerable by definition means seriously putting yourself out there. Brene Brown often asks, can you think of a single example of courage that you've witnessed or experienced in your life that did not require experiencing vulnerability? So to build this resilience to bounce back from burnout, vulnerability is not only important, it's totally required. But we often get stuck at this point, though, because when I see you do it, vulnerability, it looks like courage. Yet when I do something vulnerable, it feels like a weakness. So I want you to become more aware of this and see if you can notice how both courage and vulnerability are often present at the exact same time. This is certainly the case for me, and I want to tell you a little about my story and about choosing courage over comfort to really bring this point to life, and why choosing courage over comfort is really important in terms of creating that resilient mindset and the capacity to bounce back after burnout or after any really setbacks. So imagine losing everything that defines you. Everything that your self-worth is based on is gone. Do you think you could come back from that? So I want to tell you that yes, you can, even if you lose all of that. And I know because this happened to me 5 years ago. I lost more than my job, my dignity, my self-worth. I actually lost my sanity. About a month after the birth of my first daughter, I began suffering from a rare variant of postpartum depression that affects about 1 in 1,000 new moms. So in addition to crippling depression, this condition comes with a side of psychosis. And this happens due to the rapidly changing brain chemistry in the weeks after giving birth. So instead of snuggling with my beautiful newborn daughter, I spent several weeks hallucinating that police helicopters were swarming my house and hunting me down for a crime I didn't commit. And at some point, I told my family it would be better for everyone if I just jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge near my home. They moved into action, and I was brought to a psychiatric hospital where I spent 10 days waiting for the powerful antipsychotic medications to bring me back to reality. And let me tell you, this was a real deal psych ward, padded walls in some rooms, 24-hour lockdown. I couldn't leave this place. And two-door down from me, there was even a man who slept in a metal crate because he believed he was a dog. And then there was me, the new mom with no history of mental illness, thrown in the mix. Eventually, I did wake up from the psychosis, and it was that moment I realized I wanted to really crawl into a hole, stay hidden there. My confidence was at an all-time low. I thought I was the world's worst mother. I mean, my self-worth was gone. As you can imagine, it was truly devastating. Here I was, a mindfulness and well-being teacher that had lost her own mind. I had launched that successful career. I was speaking at all of these companies, and then I found myself completely incapacitated. And I felt ashamed. I was worried everyone who had known me as this confident and capable, savvy person might question whether I was all still there. And, would people trust my advice? Would my family even trust me? And, thankfully, after a few tough weeks, I realized, no, I'm not going to let this happen. No more asking, why did this happen, or why me? No more self-blame. And also, this wasn't going to be a dark secret I would hide from my friends and professional contacts. And I really had this desire to turn this into something good and give this experience a new meaning and figure out how to create something positive from it. And I did, thankfully. And that's what I speak more about on the stage at TEDx, was this story and my experience. And thankfully, I got the help that I needed. It was a variety of forms, including, medication, therapy, family support, sleep, running, yoga, self-care, self-compassion, all of that. And I'm not only better, but so much stronger and thankfully so much more resilient than ever before. And this was, a big moment of choosing a new path. And even though it felt scary, deciding to choose courage over comfort. I remember when I was going up to stand on the stage at TEDx, I thought I was going to throw up before I got up on stage to share my story and bare my soul in that way. But I found that when we are able to choose that courage and be vulnerable, we're so much stronger and more resilient than we could ever imagine. So choosing courage and having this resilient mindset means making this intentional and making this more of a daily practice, and knowing that even though it feels uncomfortable, that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. That's the entry fee for being brave and experiencing the joy and contentment and peace you desire. It's being willing to be a little bit uncomfortable. The next thing I want to talk about is, in terms of a resilient mindset, is really taking that time to reset. Again, this goes hand in hand with saying no and creating the space you need to reset. And this is an adorable little monkey relaxing in a warm bath, which I thought was very fitting. The next element around creating a really resilient mindset is to connect with your why. And this really means, having more purpose. I was recently reading a study out of Harvard that showed the people that have a life purpose or feel like they really are connected with their why, they have, live longer lives, they're healthier, they're happier. So there's many benefits to really connecting with your why. And the last thing also is to savor the good. This is really the upside of neuroplasticity. Taking moments to stop and appreciate. And this is my adorable daughter, Lucy, and her lemonade stand. Very California to have an organic, sugar-free, lightly sweetened lemonade stand. But that is what we did. And but really stopping when you do experience those moments of awe and joy and beauty, to stop and really savor them. So those are some of the elements of a resilient mindset. I go into all of those as well as practical applications more in depth in my Resilient AF course, which I would love to have some of you take if you're interested in going deeper into how to create a resilient mindset for yourself. So transformation, it's 20% insight, 80% action. So I want you to think about, from this webinar, what can you take into your life? What can you bring forward and really turn into actionable insights? Because that is where change really happens. I recommend creating a daily reset ritual, starting that meditation practice. On my website and on this link, you can do a short 5-minute guided meditation every day for 30 days and just be your own guinea pig. See how it works for you. See how a little bit of non-doing starts to impact the rest of your day. So I hope that this has been a really insightful webinar for you. Thank you for spending your time with me. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a lot of ahas, and also that you take action on what you've learned and, say no to a few things that aren't serving you so you can say more, create more time for your yes. So now I'll open up to any questions you might have. And thank you again.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. This has been wonderful. I have so many tips and tricks I know I'm taking with me. So we will definitely open up our questions box for any questions if you have any. So that is on your panel. So if you want to submit those now, that would be wonderful.
If anyone has any questions, you can also email me at the info@lisaabramson.com. And if you're interested in, joining that free 30-day meditation challenge, please do so. I'd love to have you be a part of that. And I also have my Resilient AF course that helps you develop that resilient mindset. So whether you need to build that resilient mindset to overcome a setback, or just frankly, I think it's what's necessary just to show up and read the news today, is to be more resilient. So that is what that course is all about, and I would love to have some of you join me there too. So you can email info@lisaabramson.com, and I'll honor a special Vanderbilt rate for my fellow alumni.
All right. Well, thank you, Lisa. It looks like we don't have any questions. You were just that thorough, but I'll make sure to include all that information in our email later this week. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and encouragement with us. And thank you all to our attendees for participating. I just want to encourage you all to check out other career resources and events we have online, both electronic and in person, provided to you by Vanderbilt Alumni Association. Later this week, I'll send a follow-up email with this archived link and a request for feedback, as well as details from Lisa's site. So we are also looking to improve upon our offerings for alumni. So if you ever have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to send those to me. Thank you again for joining us, and have a wonderful day.